Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Fireside chat. We're catching up with some of our all-star alumni, and I am here with Shruti, who is a senior product manager at Atlassian. Hi, Shruti. Nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, nice to meet you too.
So I want to get started by asking you, how did you discover product management, or what was your particular path into product?
Sure. It was quite interesting where I've always worked with product managers before I moved into product management. So my background is I actually used to work as an educational consultant where I would train customers and teach them. And then I moved on as a solutions consultant or a solutions architect, working with customers and kind of, working with the sales team, but very close contact with the product management team. And because I used to work so close with them, I knew what product management was, but I was not completely sure if that's something I wanted to do. And I was lucky enough to work in a company where they kind of gave me the opportunity of whether you want to come in and try out, and they needed help. So I just went ahead and moved into product management, totally not knowing what I was getting into. But so I kind of say that I fell into product management and have been a product manager ever since, and I love it.
Amazing. And what do you think it was that attracted you to product management? What was it that made you look at it and think, that's what I want to be doing?
Yeah. So the interesting thing was when I was working as a trainer, I was working with customers, training them and teaching them how to use our products. And I would hear from customers about, what we could do better. And the same story continued when I was working in sales and as a solutions consultant. Like I was pitching our products to our customers and they would buy, but then again, they would come back and say that, I wish if the product did this or that. And I always felt like my hands were tied where I couldn't help the customers out. So it was good when I moved into product management. I was like, okay, I finally can do something about what we hear from our customers regarding this is what they want to see in the product. So that is what attracted me first to product management. But overall, it's just, I feel like product management is very much like a team sport. You work together with various functions, your engineering team, your sales team, marketing team. So that's what made me stick in product management is the fact that, you work collaboratively and the success of what you do is so dependent on every other team that you interact with.
Mm-hmm. And we've heard on this interview series already that there is no such thing as a typical day to day in product management. It's more of a typical week by week. So
Yes.
what does a typical week look like for you in 2021?
It's a funny question because you say 2021, and yes, the life has changed a lot. Because when I joined Atlassian, I had to join remote, right? The lockdown was already in progress. So all my orientation, everything was remote. So 2020, my week just looks like a lot of Zoom calls. Now, I'm fortunate enough that I live in Sydney where things are opening up. Things have been slowly coming back to normal. And I get to go to the office now frequently. And I try to go in at least twice a week. As you mentioned, it is a typical week, not a typical day. Sometimes it's a typical month because I work in internal platforms and platforms typically have a longer life cycle than even a product. So it kind of my week is divided into like four groups. I'm doing user research. And again, my users are all internal because I'm working on an internal platform. So I have easy access to my users. Then it's a lot of strategizing on big initiatives that we are doing, prioritizing those, a lot of stakeholder management, like updating my stakeholders or getting their opinion, getting their feedback. And then a lot of communications in general about, what did we deliver? What did we ship? What's coming in future? So yeah, my week typically looks at, all these four functions.
Mm-hmm. So when you're working with internal products, are there any sort of unique challenges to that? Because you mentioned that you have easier access to your users, but then doesn't that mean they have easier access to you? So you've got more voices weighing in on what should or shouldn't be built.
Exactly. I think that it is a double-edged sword where I can just go and talk to my users at any time. I could just like ping them on Slack and they are available, but at the same time, they can ping me on Slack and tell me what we are doing wrong. So it is, and I think the other big challenge is to kind of figure out how to funnel because there is a lot of noise from internal users as well. So how do you compartmentalize? How do you ensure that the loudest voice are not the ones that you're constantly hearing and you're giving each request equal weight? it's required weightage. So that is something that you have to balance out. Whereas, and the other big challenge with internal products is you sometimes don't even have the same metrics as an external product, where for external products, your metrics are typically around, what's the revenue and how much growth you see. And internal products, you tend to see, okay, what is the impact to the external product based on your internal product, or what is the adoption, or how have you made your internal users' life better by what you build. So your impact measurements are a lot different, and you have to be very creative in thinking about, okay, how do I measure success for a product which is not really generating revenue?
Mm-hmm. And as well as being a senior product manager, you are also a product management student with Product School. You got your certification. What was that experience like for you?
Actually, it was quite interesting, where I remember when I was looking for product management courses, and this was back in the days, I think I took the product certification 6 years ago, and Product School had just started. I was the right timing because I was looking for something that's part-time, because I was already working. And it worked out very well for me, where the Product School classes were in the evening, so I could go to the class after my work. And the fact that it was taught by an existing product manager was really helpful. And the fact that I was already in the role helped me, take my learnings and implement it immediately the next day at work. So it was quite interesting to actually learn while I was on the job as well.
And even though it was 6 years ago, which must feel like an absolute lifetime ago now with everything that's changed since, is there anything that you learned in your course that you still find yourself using today?
I think what was useful for me back then was because I moved into product management and I did not have any formal training at the place I worked in. Just learning the language and terminology was really helpful. So I'm pretty sure the stuff that I learned back then during my certification is still with me. But to start off with, just learning terminology, language, thinking about, how do you write external communication, all of those little things, which would have taken me maybe 6 to 8 months of working in the role, I got to learn it faster, which helped me ramp up much faster in my first product role.
Mm-hmm. And when you first entered into product management, when you landed that first role, was it what you thought it would be, or did you have any assumptions about product management that were kind of challenged when you actually became a product manager?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I had I had assumptions which were not very positive, because I was working on the other side, right? I was working as a solutions consultant, talking to my product managers and kind of getting frustrated that why are they not getting it, right? So those assumptions were shattered, where when I moved on to product management, I realized that, looking at what customers are asking for and what sales requires is just one avenue of feedback that they're looking at, and they have to look at all the other things. So you don't realize that outside in. From outside in, you're like, the product manager always says no. So that was the big assumption that was shattered. It's not like product managers like to say no. It's because they are considering multiple factors before they make a decision. So I think that was the big assumption that got shattered.
And I suppose when it comes to saying no, you're hearing a lot of different voices and you can't say yes to all of them.
Exactly.
So no, it's just part and parcel of the job.
Yeah.
And were there any mistakes that you used to make when you were first starting out as a product manager that you wish you could go back in time and tell yourself, don't make those mistakes? Or would you guide yourself in a different direction maybe and be like, this is what you should be doing instead?
Yeah, I think a couple of things, right? One was getting data is good, but you have to draw the line of, time to market and how much data do you need to collect to make a decision. I think when you're starting off as a new product manager, sometimes you can err on the side of caution, too much caution, where you are like, I want to get all the data points before I make a decision. And sometimes you have to kind of step back and be like, this much data is enough and I can go ahead. And on the other side, there is the other way, where you completely rely on gut instinct and feel, just because you have the background and knowledge and you're like, I know this and I should just go ahead and do it. So striking the right balance is something that you learn from experience. And I guess the mistakes I made in the past helped me get better at it. I could probably go back and say, this much data is enough. You don't have to spend so much time in doing data analysis. But I feel like it's part of the growth and part of the journey, where you have to make those mistakes and learn. and then, get better at it.
Mm-hmm. And now that you've moved up to a senior product manager position, did that role come with a big step in terms of leadership? Like, do you have a little bit more authority over people now? Like, what does the leadership aspect of the job look like?
I think more than leadership, it's the expectation that people have over you. I don't think in product management you get the authority just with the title. It's more about, what you do. And when you get into a senior role, the expectation is that you deal with chaos better, you deal with vagueness better, you are able to strategize given very little direction, right? So that's kind of assumed and expected out of you, that if you're a senior product manager, with just limited data, you're able to kind of synthesize and figure out what is the direction you want to take a particular feature or a particular product. So that's a big change from when you just start out as a product manager and they give you one specific area and you get a lot of mentorship. And there are places when you are a senior PM, you might not even get that mentorship because they expect you to operate at that level. So that's the big change.
Mm-hmm. And just circling back a little bit to the when you got your certification, obviously you don't need a certification to become a product manager. It's not like the key to the castle. So what would you say are the main benefits to having a certification as a product manager?
I think not everybody gets the same opportunity that I did, where a company was willing and able to give me the chance to transition without having a certification and without having the background, whether it's like a business degree or prior product management experience, right? So I definitely think a certification helps where you do want to become a product manager and you may be working in a function that doesn't have that access to customers, right? So you could definitely say that I have learned how to apply product thinking, and that's where the certification would help. So the other piece is the certification also tells you that you know what a product manager does, because the function is so different in different companies. You at least have a baseline because you have gone through a certification process of what is expected from a product manager. So I think those are the two things that would really help somebody who has gone through the certification process.
That's interesting. It's quite easy to imagine someone who's maybe a project manager who doesn't really know what product management is, looking at a job role and going, that must be the same thing. And then they land there and they're like, oh, no, it's definitely not the same thing. And is there anything that you would say as like the main piece of advice for people wanting to get into product management nowadays? Is there anything that they should like highlight on their resume, or certain jobs that they should be looking for? How would you start from zero trying to get into product management?
So I actually have I have advised a lot of people when they have approached me on how to break into product management, and there are like three different avenues in my mind. One is, the first thing is, a lot of companies have an associate product management role, which is definitely for people who don't have any experience in product management. And then you can, get a foot in the door. Like Atlassian, for example, has a really great APM program that people can join, and that puts them in the product management path. The other piece is something that I did where, a company can give you that option to transition. So I was lucky where I was tapped, but you don't have to wait, right? If you are working in a company and you know the product management team, you can go and reach out and just shadow them. Don't be afraid to network and cold call inside your company before you even start looking at LinkedIn. So that's definitely something that I encourage people to do. Look at your own company's product management team and see where they need help. Typically, they do need help. Right. Mm-hmm. And the third piece is, if that doesn't work, then you reach out and look at your network, and Product School is great for that. I think the biggest advantage that I received when I was in Product School was not just the certification, but the fact that they used to have these meetups and talks that you go and, listen to the people who come and speak about product management. You meet other people who are either in PM roles or are aspiring to be PMs, and network with them, right? That will always go a long way. So I think those are the three approaches you can take when you're trying to break into product management.
Mm-hmm. We're super excited to hopefully be bringing back our in-person meetups at some point. I make no promises about the timeline, but at some point we really want to get people back in the room together. We think it's so important for, like you say, networking, just getting that experience, building the community. So yeah, hopefully we'll be getting those back soon. And
great.
sort of on the same vein as that, there's a lot of information out there about breaking into product management, and maybe not so much about what you should do when you've been in product management for a few years, you have the experience, and you sort of reach that intermediate plateau where sort of you're ready for the next thing, but you're not really sure which direction to take. How do you think people should know when they're ready for that next step? How would you know that you're ready for that new promotion, or you're ready to move to that new company? Like what moment is it like, right, time to make my move?
Yeah, it's interesting where I just heard this today where, sometimes you tend to think that you have to meet 80 to 90% of the next role to apply for the next role. But the honest truth is you learn on the job, right? Whether it's product management or senior product management. So take that leap of faith where you're like, I'm not meeting all the criteria, but I think there are 3 or 4 things listed which I can do really well. And if you show that inclination to learn the other things, like that's what people are looking for. If I am hiring, that's what I look for, is that person willing to learn and committed to spend the time needed to learn? Because anything can be taught if the person is ready to learn, right? So take that leap. If there is a senior position out there and you think you are like 50% ready, go ahead, try it. What's the worst that could happen, right? And when you get the role, and you may flounder for the first 6 months, but then you will swim. So I would say take that leap of faith.
That's such great advice. And just while we're on the topic of hiring, what are some of the other things that you look for when you're hiring people into your team? Obviously, like willingness to learn and a great attitude are like, the top 2. Is there anything in terms of hard skills that you're particularly looking for, or is it mostly the soft skills and the mindset?
I think it depends on what we are looking for at the moment. So when we are hiring for product management, also sometimes you're hiring a product manager for a particular area. So there is a combination of hard and soft skills that you look for. The soft skills are typically the same across the board, right? You're looking for people who are great storytellers, are good at communication, can work cross-functionally. That's very important. Are able to work with different types of personalities, because there is a lot of conflict that comes with the product management area, and how do you deal with that, right? That's especially when you're growing in the role, like when you're getting into senior positions. The hard skills are definitely dependent on what's the need of the company and the department at that time. Like if you're looking for somebody because the area is very technical, then yes, I would be looking for those skill sets. But if you're looking for something which is not very technical, then maybe the soft skills focus would be higher. So yeah.
And sorry, there's a lot of information out there as well for like younger PMs, newer PMs, but as you're a product leader, I'm really interested in hearing your opinion on this. We've been talking in our community recently about how the role of leadership has kind of shifted a little bit, thanks to everything in 2020, how you have to have a little bit more of a human approach. Yes. Is that something that you would agree with? And like, how did you manage that throughout everything that 2020 brought?
I think definitely, like, you have to take a step back and give people the space and time to breathe and recover, especially in 2020. And I mean, some of the best leaders I have worked with are the ones who have actually that empathy. Like for product managers, empathy is so important. And if you are empathetic to your customers and to your stakeholders, I think the biggest empathy is to your coworkers and to the people who report up to you. So definitely that's a huge thing. And again, because you are in a position that's so cross-functional, you have to be mindful of what you're requesting other folks to do for you, and their space, their bandwidth. Just being on Zoom 24/7 can get to people. So yeah,
Zoom fatigue is so real.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And what other techniques have you found really helpful for being able to manage teams, especially as product management, it's cross-functional teams? How have you found that as like a remote management experience?
I think the one big thing with remote is when you're in the office, you kind of have those avenues where you are just like, taking a break and going for coffee or like meeting people for lunch. And that was not happening. And you can try to facilitate like remote socials, but it's just not the same, right? But what I do is I used to do one-on-ones with people, right? Which is just a regular scheduled one-on-one, but we are not talking about work. We're just catching up, right? And that kind of help, like just checking in with people helps a lot, and doing those one-on-ones where you're not talking about work. Those are some things. It's definitely not a replacement. I can't wait for things to go back to normal. And, we are meeting up in person and we're doing socials. Like we have tried to do offsites, which are remote, and those have also been very difficult, but it's a work in progress. We're all learning.
It's something, at least, better than nothing.
Yeah. Yes.
So I just have one last question for you. It's always my favorite question to ask, and our podcast listeners will, if they've listened to our special seasons, they've definitely recognized this one. What is the greatest lesson that product management has ever taught you?
I think this is something I touched upon earlier, which is empathy, right? I always had a lot of empathy for users because all my roles have been very user facing and user focused, but just having empathy for other cross-functional teams, that is something that I really learned being a product manager, where it's like, it's not just about you doing a great job, it's about everybody doing a great job. And then that is what leads to a great product or a great strategy and execution. So that empathy of, feeling for all the other teams is something that is a big takeaway for me in product management.
And a good life skill as well, just empathy for others in general. Excellent life skill. Yeah. So that's everything that I had to ask you, even though I'm sure I could ask you a million more questions. I want to thank you so much for joining us. I feel like I've learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone watching at home will have learned a lot as well. We will see you in the next one. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Shruti, for your time today.
Thank you. This was awesome.
Okay, great. Bye, everyone. See you soon.